My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my adult life nobody would have looked at me and thought, she's going somewhere. Especially not my boyfriend. Or, more accurately, my ex-boyfriend. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I grew up in an aggressively ordinary middle-class family. My parents were good people, but there was no trust fund waiting for me. No family business, with my name already engraved on an office door. No starter house magically appearing after graduation. If I wanted something, I worked for it. So I did. At 28, that philosophy had landed me in the fluorescent-lit purgatory of an insurance company's data entry department. Imagine rows of gray cubicles smelling faintly of printer ink and reheated lunches. A manager who believed leadership meant walking around with a coffee cup pointing out mistakes. Co-workers who could tell you everything about someone's divorce but couldn't finish a spreadsheet before 5. That was Monday through Friday. My salary covered my half of the bills, groceries, and the increasingly suspicious noises coming from my aging Honda. Nothing glamorous. But I wasn't drowning. What almost nobody knew was that my real work started after I came home. Programming courses, coding challenges, small applications, GitHub projects, tutorials playing at 1 a.m. while cold coffee sat beside my laptop. I'd been doing it for years. Quietly. Ryan knew I was interested in software, but I don't think he ever understood how seriously I took it. Ryan Carter was 26, and we'd been together for 2 years. 8 months earlier, he'd moved into my studio apartment. When we'd first started dating, he loved that place. He called it cozy. He liked the secondhand couch. He joked about my wobbly kitchen table. Then Ryan landed a marketing job. And somehow, within a few months, cozy became embarrassing. One evening, we were sitting in my Honda when he stared at the cracked edge of the dashboard. "Don't you ever wish you had something newer?" I looked at him. "Sure. Maybe I'll buy whatever your dad drives. You seem pretty comfortable with other people's money." He didn't laugh. That should have told me something. Soon, it was the couch. Then, the television. Then my clothes. Then, my career. Ryan had a coworker whose boyfriend had recently bought an SUV, and apparently that man became the unofficial measuring stick for our relationship. "Daniel just upgraded again," Ryan would casually mention. "Congratulations to Daniel. He's only 30. Should we send him a cake?" Ryan hated that I wouldn't take the bait. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was eating lunch at my desk when an email notification appeared. I almost ignored it. Then, I saw the subject line, "Senior Software Developer Position Final Offer." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. I'd gone through 4 interviews with a technology company in Manhattan. Phew. I'd walked out of the second interview convinced I'd embarrassed myself. Instead, there it was. A 6-figure salary. Relocation covered. Temporary housing assistance. Benefits that looked almost fictional compared to what I had. And a start date within 3 months with the option to begin earlier. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Years of studying after work. Weekends spent debugging code, while Ryan complained that I never wanted to go anywhere expensive. Application. Rejections. Interviews. All of it had quietly led to this. My first instinct was to call Ryan. My hand actually reached for my phone. Then I stopped. Because I already knew exactly what would happen. If I told him I'd been interviewing, and then got rejected, he'd use it as evidence that I'd aimed too high. And now that I'd succeeded, he'd rewrite history. He'd say he'd always believed in me. That he'd always known I could do it. That all those little comments had simply been his way of motivating me. Something inside me wanted to know whether Ryan could value Claire Bennett without knowing what Claire Bennett was about to earn. So I minimized the email. I had 2 weeks to accept. That evening, I came home like nothing had happened. Ryan was stretched across the couch scrolling Instagram. The same couch he'd spent months insulting. He barely glanced up. Hey. I stood there looking at him. For one strange second, I almost smiled. You have absolutely no idea how close my entire life is to changing. But I said nothing. A few nights later, Ryan insisted we have dinner with his parents. His father barely waited until the food arrived. "Any new opportunities at work, Claire?" The question sounded innocent. It wasn't. Same old grind, I said. I'm good at what I do. His mother gave me the kind of smile people reserve for children who finish last in a school race. Well, at least you're consistent. Ryan smirked. Then the conversation became a celebration of his career. New clients. A presentation he'd helped with. His manager complimenting him. Potential promotions. I listened politely. Then, his mother glanced around their dining room and laughed. Maybe we'll have to help you to upgrade that furniture eventually. Ryan laughed with her. That was the moment. Not the insult. His laugh. I looked at the man I'd shared a bed with for 8 months and realized he wasn't embarrassed for me. He was embarrassed by me. I leaned back. Good thing furniture doesn't define a relationship. Otherwise, half the couples in this neighborhood would need divorce lawyers. His father's smile disappeared. Ryan kicked my ankle beneath the table. Later in the car, he exploded. You embarrassed me. I glanced over. Interesting interpretation. Why do you always have to be sarcastic? Why does your family always need someone beneath them? They're trying to help. No, they're trying to remind me where they think I belong. Ryan stared through the windshield. Then he muttered, Sometimes I think you don't even want better. I almost told him. The offer was right there. One sentence could have ended the argument. Instead, I said quietly, If you're that unhappy with me, Ryan, you can leave. He went silent, and I went home with my secret intact. For the next several days, the tension grew. Ryan complained about my television. Most people our age have smart TVs. Most people our age also have credit card debt. He complained that we weren't looking for a house. I told him I'd happily put 20% down using my Monopoly money. Every joke made him angrier, because what he really wanted wasn't an answer. He wanted submission. Then came Tuesday. I walked through the apartment door after work, and immediately knew something was wrong. Ryan was pacing the kitchen. He started talking about his day. Then, about his coworker. Then, inevitably, about her boyfriend. He just got promoted to regional manager, Ryan said. They're already looking at houses. I set my keys down. Good for them. Isn't that amazing? There was that artificial sweetness. I leaned against the counter. Just say whatever you're trying to say. His expression hardened. I don't understand how everyone our age seems to be moving forward while you're comfortable standing still. There it was. I almost laughed. Translation. Why don't I make as much money as your coworker's boyfriend? I'm serious, Claire. So, don't you want more? You mean, besides paying my bills, supporting myself, and working every day? You're comfortable with mediocrity. That word hung between us. Mediocrity. Meanwhile, less than 10 feet away, my laptop contained an offer that would nearly triple my salary. Ryan continued, I need someone with ambition. Someone with status. Someone who can give me the future I deserve. Something inside me became completely still. No anger. No heartbreak. Just clarity. I raised an eyebrow. So I have no future. Ryan hesitated, then said it. I don't think you have the kind of future I want. I nodded. Then leave. His face changed. What? You heard me. That's all you have to say. What exactly were you expecting me to audition for my own relationship? Claire, you've already decided I'm not good enough. Why are you wasting your time? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. That wasn't how he'd imagined this conversation. He'd expected tears, promises, maybe some dramatic declaration that I'd work harder. Instead, I pointed toward the bedroom. Nobody's keeping you here. 20 minutes later, Ryan was throwing clothes into a suitcase. I stood against the doorframe. He shoved shirts inside, with angry jerking movements. You really don't care. I looked at him. That question hurt more than his insults had. Because once I had cared desperately, I just finally understood that caring didn't require humiliating myself. Grab the gray throw blanket, I said. You always liked that one. He stared at me. You're unbelievable. Thanks. He slammed the suitcase closed. By the weekend, Ryan was officially gone. His toiletries disappeared from the bathroom. Half the dishes vanished. His cologne slowly faded from the apartment. And the silence? I expected it to feel lonely. Instead, it felt like oxygen. Then, less than a week later, I saw him downtown. He wasn't alone. Ryan was standing beside a polished black car, with a woman I'd never seen before. She wore designer sunglasses, an expensive-looking watch, immaculate clothes, the kind of person whose entire appearance screamed money. Ryan leaned toward her while laughing. For half a second I just watched. So, that was it. He hadn't been searching for a future. He'd been searching for packaging. I didn't confront him, didn't cry, didn't even feel particularly jealous. I went home, sat on the same second-hand couch he'd mocked, opened my laptop, and pulled up the offer. My cursor hovered over accept. I thought about his parents' dinner table, his jokes about my car, his obsession with other people's lives, and finally, I don't think you have the kind of future I want. I could have clicked the button that night. Instead, I closed my laptop. Tomorrow, I whispered. The following morning, before clocking into the insurance job Ryan believed would define the rest of my life, I opened the email again and clicked accept. Just like that, Claire Bennett, the woman with no future, had one waiting for her in Manhattan. And Ryan still had absolutely no idea. The morning I accepted the offer, nothing outside of me changed. The fluorescent lights still buzzed above my cubicle. My Honda still made that awful squeal whenever I turned too sharply. My manager still wandered around, carrying his oversized coffee cup like it was a symbol of authority. But inside, everything was different. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering when my real life would begin. It already had. I called the Manhattan company's HR department during my lunch break and asked whether they actually needed the full 3 months before I started. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. "If you're available earlier, we'd love to have you." "How much earlier?" "As soon as you can reasonably relocate." I looked around at the gray cubicles surrounding me. "Give me a few weeks." After hanging up, I sat there smiling at my monitor. Ryan had walked away believing he'd escaped a dead end. Meanwhile, my exit had already been approved. I still didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not my friends, and definitely not Ryan. There was something strangely peaceful about keeping it mine for a little longer. The next morning, I printed my resignation letter. My manager, Dennis, barely looked up when I entered his office. "What's up?" I placed the letter on his desk. He read the first few lines. Then he looked at me, then back at the letter. "You're resigning." That's generally what a resignation letter means. His eyebrows tightened. Dennis had once told me I should consider myself fortunate to have stable employment after I'd asked about a raise. Now he leaned back. "Where are you going?" "New opportunity." "What kind?" "Software development." His expression changed. He'd known I studied programming. He'd simply never taken it seriously. "Local?" "No." "Where?" I smiled. "Somewhere that values my time." That landed exactly where I intended. By lunchtime, everyone knew I was leaving. Nobody knew where. That mystery apparently transformed me into the most fascinating person in the building. People who normally walked past my desk without acknowledging me suddenly appeared beside my cubicle. "Claire heard. You're leaving. Where are you going? What's the salary? Did someone recruit you?" I kept giving the same answer. Just trying something new. The less I said, the more dramatic their guesses became. By 3 o'clock, according to office gossip, I had apparently been hired by Google, recruited by the government, or secretly launched my own company. Only Mark knew the truth. He'd been one of the few co-workers who'd always treated me like an actual human being. When I told him the salary, his mouth dropped open. "Claire." "Yeah. You're gonna make more than Dennis." "Please don't say that too loudly. He might spill his coffee." Mark laughed. Then Dennis returned to my desk, near the end of the day. This time, he had the smile. You know the one. The corporate smile that appears when someone realizes the employee they undervalued has options. "Listen, Claire. I've been thinking. That's dangerous." He ignored that. "You've been dependable here. Maybe I could speak to HR, see if there's room for a salary adjustment." I stared at him. Months earlier, I'd asked for one. He'd told me budgets were tight. Now suddenly, money existed. So now I'm worth more. Dennis shifted awkwardly. "That's not what I'm saying." "It's exactly what you're saying. We'd like to keep you." I smiled. "That's cute, but I'm good." His face fell, and I realized something. Being underestimated only hurts when you still need the person underestimating you to change their mind. I didn't anymore. The next 2 weeks moved quickly. During the day, I trained my replacement. At night, I dismantled the life Ryan had criticized. The couch went first. I posted it online expecting maybe $50. Someone messaged me within 10 minutes. An hour later, it was gone. I stood in the empty space laughing. Apparently, my embarrassing dorm furniture had value after all. Then, the television sold. Then the kitchen table. Every cardboard box felt like another door closing. One night, while packing dishes, my phone buzzed. Mark had sent me a screenshot. Ryan. His arm was around the woman I'd seen downtown. Her name apparently was Vanessa Cole. The caption read, "Proud of this woman. She knows how to build a real future." I stared at it for several seconds, then laughed so loudly, I nearly dropped a plate. It would have hurt months earlier. Now it was just funny. But the joke got better. Through mutual friends, I gradually learned Vanessa wasn't the high-powered executive Ryan seemed to think she was. She managed a clothing store. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. What was ridiculous was the performance. The black luxury car. Leased. Designer accessories. Mostly financed. Expensive nights out. Credit cards. Vanessa wasn't wealthy. She was simply extremely committed to looking wealthy. And Ryan had fallen for it, because looking successful was exactly what mattered to him. He hadn't upgraded. He'd found his mirror. I didn't message him. Didn't post anything passive-aggressive. Didn't correct his assumptions. I kept packing. My mother eventually noticed something was happening. I'd stopped complaining about work. I sounded lighter on the phone. One evening, she asked Claire, "Is something going on?" "Good things." "What kind of good things?" "You'll know soon." She laughed. My father apparently heard the conversation because I heard him in the background. "She's up to something." He knew me too well. Then came the strangest call. Ryan's mother. I stared at her name on my screen before answering. She hadn't called me personally in months. "Hello, Claire, hi." Her voice was almost painfully cheerful. "I just wanted to see how you're doing." "Interesting. I'm fine. We were sorry to hear about you and Ryan." "Were they?" "I'm sure." Pause. "I heard you're making some changes." There it was. Someone knew something. Everybody makes changes. "Are you leaving your company?" "Yes." "Oh, where are you going?" I smiled, still sorting everything out. I wasn't. Everything was signed. Movers booked. Apartment sublet arranged. But after that dinner at their house, I wasn't interested in giving Ryan's family an early preview. "Well," she said, disappointed, "keep in touch." "Sure." I didn't. My final day arrived faster than expected. Mark appeared at my desk around noon. "We're having drinks Friday." "No, that wasn't a question." "Mark, Claire, you're moving to New York for a 6-figure software job. You don't get to disappear like Batman." "Isaihu." 5 people. Absolutely. It wasn't 5 people. By Friday evening, Mark's small farewell drink had somehow become a party occupying the back room of a local bar. Former coworkers came. College friends appeared. People I hadn't seen in years somehow heard about it. When I walked inside, someone actually applauded. "Absolutely not," I said, covering my face. Mark shoved a drink into my hand. "Get used to being impressive." That sentence hit harder than he probably intended. For 2 years, I'd lived with someone who made me feel increasingly inadequate. Now, a room full of people was celebrating the exact work Ryan had never bothered to notice. Later, Mark stood up with his glass. To Claire Bennett. People quieted. The woman who proved you don't need to announce every move you're making. Sometimes you just shut up work and suddenly you're moving to Manhattan to make more money than the rest of us. Everyone laughed. I raised my glass. They were desperate. More laughter. Then I noticed someone near the bar. Ryan's best friend Ethan. I hadn't invited him, but he knew Mark through mutual friends. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "You're the one moving to New York." "Apparently. For a software job. That's what they tell me." He stirred. Ryan never said anything. I took a sip. Funny. Must have slipped his mind. Ethan gave an uncomfortable laugh, but I knew exactly what was happening. The second he left, Ryan would know. Photos started appearing online before midnight. Group pictures. "Congratulations. posts about Manhattan. Someone tagged the company. Someone else mentioned the salary range. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. At 2:17 in the morning, one notification finally appeared that I had been expecting. Ryan. I opened it. Hey. Can we talk? 3 minutes later. Is it true you're moving to New York? Then, why didn't you tell me? I placed the phone down. It buzzed again. A longer message. I don't understand why you would hide something this big when we were together. I feel completely blindsided. We spent 2 years together, Claire. We should talk about us. I stared at the words. Us. Interesting how quickly us returned once 6 figures entered the conversation. I didn't answer. The next morning there were 2 missed calls. By evening 5. Then came voicemails. At first Ryan sounded composed. I just want to clear the air. The next one was softer. I've been thinking about us a lot. Maybe I was too hard on you. By the 3rd day the calm disappeared. So you're seriously just going to move to New York and pretend I don't exist? After 2 years? I listened. Deleted. Listened. Deleted. Not because I wanted to punish him. Because there was nothing left to discuss. He wasn't calling because he'd suddenly understood my character. He was calling because the evidence had destroyed his narrative. The woman he'd called mediocre was moving to Manhattan. The woman he'd said had no future had secured one before he'd even walked out. And worst of all for Ryan, his friends knew. Then moving day arrived. The apartment looked almost unrecognizable. Boxes lined the wall. Movers carried the last furniture toward the truck. I walked through each room once. That studio had witnessed 2 years of my life. Arguments, late-night coding. Ryan laughing on that couch. Ryan insulting that couch. Me staring at the ceiling wondering whether maybe he was right about me. I touched the kitchen counter, then stepped outside. And froze. Ryan stood near the driveway, arms folded, nervous. For the first time since I'd known him, he didn't look confident. Hey, he said. I checked my watch. The movers leave in 5 minutes. He swallowed. Can we talk? You've got 5 minutes. His face tightened, but he stepped closer. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I was stressed. I was comparing us to everyone else. I said things I shouldn't have said. Such as. His eyes dropped. That you had no future. And that you were mediocre. And, Claire. No. You're here. Finish it. He exhaled. I was wrong. There it was. But strangely, hearing it didn't feel satisfying. Ryan continued. I should have believed in you. I laughed once. You didn't fail to believe in me. You wrote me off. I didn't know about the job. Exactly. He frowned. What does that mean? It means I was worth respecting before the salary. Silence. You lived with me. You watched me work. You watched me study every night. But because none of it impressed your coworkers yet, it didn't count. Ryan's eyes began shining. I was scared. Okay. Everyone seemed ahead of us. Then you should have talked to me. Instead you auditioned replacements. His face flushed. Vanessa isn't. I don't care about Vanessa. That stopped him. And it was true. I realized we had something good, Ryan said. Maybe we could try again. I shook my head. You don't get to hit eject and then climb back into the plane after it takes off. His desperation sharpened. Then he said something that erased whatever sympathy I had left. Maybe if I hadn't pushed you, you wouldn't have done this. I stared at him. What? I pushed you to want more. Maybe what I said lit a fire under you. I actually laughed. Ryan, I had the offer before you dumped me. His entire face emptied. What? The email came days before our fight. He stared at me. You already had it. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know whether you could respect me without knowing the number on my paycheck. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. And you answered that question beautifully. The mover slammed the truck door. Ryan looked toward it, then back at me. Claire, wait. I could come with you. I almost thought I'd misheard him. What? New York. Maybe this is what we needed. A fresh start. No. You didn't even think about it. I thought about it for 2 years. His voice cracked. So that's it. I picked up my keys. That's it. I walked toward my car. Claire. I stopped, turned. Ryan stood beside the empty apartment we'd once imagined sharing for years. You really don't see any future for us. I looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. You told me I had no future. He flinched. Funny thing is, Ryan, maybe you were right. I opened the car door, because the only future I don't have is one with you in it. Then I got behind the wheel. The moving truck pulled out ahead of me. Ryan remained in the driveway, getting smaller in my rearview mirror. I didn't know it then, but that wasn't the last time he'd come looking for a place in my new life. The next time he'd travel hundreds of miles to do it. And he'd bring a suitcase. New York didn't give me time to mourn anything. That was probably exactly what I needed. From the moment I arrived, everything moved. Cars honking beneath towering buildings. People walking like they were permanently 5 minutes late. Subway trains roaring underground. Delivery bikes slicing through traffic. Lights still glowing in office windows long after midnight. For the first few weeks, the company placed me in temporary corporate housing while I searched for somewhere permanent. It wasn't glamorous. But every morning I woke up knowing I had earned my place there. A week after arriving, I sold the Honda. That car had carried me through bad jobs, cheap grocery runs, late-night coding sessions at coffee shops, and more arguments with Ryan than I cared to remember. When the buyer drove away, I felt unexpectedly emotional. Then I remembered Ryan calling it embarrassing. I laughed. Take care of her, I whispered. 2 weeks later, I signed a lease on a Brooklyn apartment. The first night there, I had almost no furniture. A maîtresse, 2 boxes, a folding chair, and a cheap bottle of wine Mark had shoved into my hands before I left home. But there was a balcony. I stepped outside, after midnight. Across the river, Manhattan glittered against the darkness. I rested my arms on the railing. For a long time I just stared. No future. Ryan's words came back to me. And for the first time they didn't sting. They sounded ridiculous. Work was even better than I'd imagined. At the insurance company, I had spent years feeling replaceable. Here, people actually asked what I thought. My manager, Daniel Brooks, didn't hover over my desk waiting for mistakes. During my first major project meeting, he stopped halfway through a discussion and looked at me. Claire, you've been quiet. What are we missing? I almost looked behind me. At my old job, being quiet meant being invisible. Here, silence apparently meant someone wanted to hear what I had to say. I gave my opinion. Daniel considered it, then said, let's try Claire's approach. That tiny moment stayed with me for days. It wasn't the money that changed me. It was being respected. 3 months later, I was promoted. When Daniel called me into his office, I assumed something had gone wrong. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk. We think you're operating above your current level. I stared at him. Is this the part where you give me more work for the same salary? He laughed. No. It's the part where we give you more work and considerably more money. I walked out of his office, almost dizzy. For the first time in my life, someone had offered me a raise before I threatened to leave. Outside work, things changed too. I started going to the gym with 2 coworkers, Marcus and Theo. My neighbor, Sophie, introduced herself after watching me struggle with grocery bags in the elevator. Soon I had people to grab dinner with. People to call on weekends. People who knew me as Claire, not Ryan's girlfriend, not the woman with the old Honda, not the quiet data entry employee. Just me. My life became full enough that weeks passed without me thinking about him. Ryan, unfortunately, wasn't ready to return the favor. His messages started innocently. Congratulations on the promotion. No response. Then, happy birthday. Hope New York is treating you well. Nothing. A week later. Remember when we used to talk about living somewhere exciting? Crazy that you're actually doing it. I stared at that one. Wait. I remembered plenty of nights when I talked about technology jobs in bigger cities. Ryan usually responded by asking whether those jobs paid enough to afford a nice apartment. Apparently my dreams had become our dreams now that they had succeeded. I deleted the message. Then came paragraphs. Long ones. He wrote about our first date. Our first Christmas. The night we'd stayed awake until 3 in the morning, talking about what we wanted from life. Some memories were real. That was the dangerous part. People don't become monsters just because relationships end. Ryan had made me laugh. He had once held me while I cried after my grandmother died. There had been mornings when we'd eaten cereal in bed and talked about absolutely nothing. Those memories existed beside the cruelty. For a moment, I wondered whether ignoring him was childish. Then another message arrived. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I always knew you were capable of more. I laughed aloud. There it was. History being rewritten in real time. I blocked the number, so Ryan moved to social media. Mutual friends began sending screenshots. One post read, "Sometimes loving someone means pushing them toward the person they're meant to become." Another, "It's strange watching someone achieve everything you encourage them to chase, and then act like you were never part of the journey." I stared at my phone. Then Marcus, sitting beside me at lunch, glanced over. Bad news. My ex apparently invented my career. He read the screenshot. His eyebrows climbed. That's impressive. Right. Did he also invent computers? Probably. I'm waiting for the announcement. We laughed. But underneath the humor something bothered me. Ryan wasn't apologizing anymore. He was building a version of events where my success belonged partly to him. Then Ethan sent me another screenshot. This one showed Ryan responding to someone in the comments. I pushed her because I knew she could be better. Someday she'll understand that. I locked my phone. That sentence bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Because suddenly I understood. Ryan couldn't accept that he'd simply been wrong. If he'd been wrong, then he'd thrown away a good relationship because he was shallow. But if he'd motivated me, then he could still be important. He could turn his mistake into sacrifice. I decided not to participate. 4 months after I moved to New York, I stayed late at the office fixing a production issue. By the time I finally left, it was after 11. I ordered an Uber. The ride back to Brooklyn was quiet. I remember resting my forehead against the window, watching storefronts blur past. All I wanted was a shower and sleep. The car stopped outside my building. I stepped onto the sidewalk, then froze. Someone was standing beneath the awning. For half a second, my exhausted brain refused to process what I was seeing. Then he stepped into the light. Ryan. And beside him, a suitcase. My stomach dropped. Not because I wanted him back, because suddenly the hundreds of miles between us didn't feel protective anymore. He smiled. Surprise. I stared at him. What are you doing here? I came to see you. With luggage? His smile faltered. I thought maybe we could talk. Ryan, how did you get my address? That question changed his expression. Only slightly. But I noticed. Ethan mentioned the neighborhood. Your building was in one of Sophie's posts. A cold feeling moved through me. You searched for my building. Don't make it sound creepy. You flew to another state and found an address I never gave you. I came because I love you. I actually laughed. It was partly disbelief. Ryan. He stepped closer. We always talked about New York. No. I talked about moving somewhere for work. You talked about whether I could afford it. That's not fair. It's extremely fair. He grabbed the suitcase handle. I've had time to think. Apparently not enough. Claire, please. I folded my arms. Say whatever you flew here to say. His eyes softened. I made a mistake. I waited. Vanessa and I are done. There it was. I almost smiled. Congratulations. That's not why I'm here. Sure. It made me realize something. That leased cars aren't personality traits. His jaw tightened. You always do that. Do what? Turn everything into a joke. No, just the funny parts. He exhaled. I realized I was chasing appearances. I thought I needed someone who looked successful because I was insecure about where I was. That was surprisingly self-aware. For perhaps 3 seconds I thought Ryan might actually have changed. Then, he ruined it. But being here proves I was right about one thing. I narrowed my eyes. What? You needed someone to push you. There it was again. He stepped closer. You've become everything I knew you could be. No. Claire. You didn't know. I did. You literally left because you believed the opposite. I was trying to make you see your potential. I laughed. You've got to stop saying that. Why? Because repeating a lie doesn't turn it into a memory. His face hardened. I pushed you. You insulted me. Because I wanted more for you. You wanted more from me. Silence. There's a difference. Ryan's eyes watered. I came all this way. Nobody asked you to. I thought you'd be happy. That genuinely shocked me. Why? Because we're supposed to be here together. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He gestured toward the skyline, like the city itself was evidence. This. New York. Your career. Everything we talked about. Ryan, there is no we. There could be. He lifted the suitcase. I can stay. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You didn't book a hotel? He hesitated. That was my answer. You thought you were staying with me. I thought once we talked. No. Claire. No. His voice rose. I moved things around to come here. That's your problem. I left my job. That stopped me. What? I kid. For the first time, Ryan looked genuinely frightened. I thought I'd find something here. Marketing jobs are everywhere. I stared at him. You quit your job before asking whether I wanted you here. I believed in us. No, Ryan. You gambled on me. His face went pale. And suddenly, everything made sense. Vanessa was gone. His job was gone. Whatever life he'd built after me had collapsed. And now he'd arrived with a suitcase, expecting to step directly into mine. You don't miss me, I said. His expression changed. Of course I do. No, you miss stability. That's not true. You thought Vanessa was an upgrade because she looked wealthy. When that collapsed, you looked at me. Stop. Now I have the salary, the apartment, the career, the city. Claire. And suddenly I'm your destiny. You're being cruel. Cruel. I stepped closer. You laughed at my apartment. His eyes dropped. You mocked my car. Silence. You compared me to strangers. You sat at your parents' table while they treated me like your charity case. I apologized. And then you spent 4 months telling people you created my success. His head snapped up. That's not what I said. I've seen the screenshots. His face drained. I continued quietly. You didn't build me, Ryan. He said nothing. You tried to make me feel small because you couldn't recognize progress unless other people applauded it. His eyes filled. I love you. No. You don't get to decide that. You're right, but I get to decide whether it matters. He stepped toward me. I stepped backward. Don't. He froze. The building's doorman, who had apparently been watching through the glass, came outside. Everything okay, Miss Bennett? Ryan looked embarrassed. I nodded. He's leaving. Ryan's head snapped toward me. No, I'm not. The doorman's expression changed immediately. Sir, she said, you're leaving. Ryan tightened his grip on the suitcase. I flew all the way here. I looked at him. Then fly all the way back. Claire, please. No. You can't erase 2 years. I'm not erasing anything. I reached for the building door. I'm just refusing to repeat them. His voice cracked behind me. You're going to regret this. I stopped. Turned around. Ryan stood beneath the lights with his suitcase beside him, looking nothing like the confident man who'd told me I had no future. I already know what regretting you feels like, I said. I did it while we were still together. His face crumpled. I entered the building. The doorman remained outside. As the glass door closed, I could hear Ryan arguing. His voice became muffled, then distant, then gone. Upstairs, I dropped my keys onto the counter. My hands were shaking. That surprised me. I'd been calm downstairs. But once the door locked behind me, the adrenaline arrived. I stepped onto the balcony. The skyline stretched across the horizon. Same buildings, same lights, but something felt different. For months, Ryan had been trying to attach himself to my success. Tonight, he'd literally arrived carrying luggage, expecting to move into it. And finally, I understood something. Success wasn't revenge. Money wasn't revenge. New York wasn't revenge. The real victory was the locked door behind me. It was being able to say no without wondering whether I'd made a mistake. I thought that night would finally convince Ryan there was no place for him in my life. For almost a year, it seemed like it had. Then my cousin sent me a wedding invitation. Back home. I stared at the envelope and felt an uneasy twist in my stomach. Because small towns have long memories. And apparently, so did Ryan. For almost a year after Ryan showed up outside my Brooklyn building with a suitcase, I didn't see him. Eventually, I stopped expecting to. Life had a funny way of filling the spaces he'd once occupied. Work got busier. My responsibilities expanded. Daniel put me in charge of a small development team, which terrified me at first. I'd spent so long being treated like the least important person in the room that suddenly having people look to me for decisions felt unnatural. But I adapted. I learned. And slowly the confidence that had once existed only inside me became visible on the outside too. My apartment changed. The mattress on the floor disappeared. I bought furniture I actually liked, not because it looked expensive, not because someone else's boyfriend owned something better, but because it made the place feel like mine. Ironically, I bought another secondhand coffee table. Marcus nearly died laughing when he saw it. "Careful," he said. "Your ex might sense this from 3 states away." I threw a cushion at him. Ryan's messages gradually stopped. For months, nothing. No nostalgic paragraphs. No motivational revisionist history. No surprise visits. Just silence. And the strangest thing happened. I stopped needing him to regret what he'd done. That surprised me. When I first moved, I'd imagined some future moment where Ryan would finally understand. He'd see the job, the apartment, the promotion, the life, and he'd realize he'd been wrong. For a while, that fantasy had felt satisfying. But eventually, his opinion became irrelevant. That was when I knew I'd actually moved on. Then my cousin Emily announced she was getting married. Back home, I stared at the invitation for almost a week before RSVPing. Not because of Ryan, at least that's what I told myself. But hometowns are strange. You can become an entirely different person, then drive past one familiar gas station, and suddenly you're 22 again, questioning every decision you've ever made. Still, Emily was family. So I booked the flight. A year after I'd left with everything I owned packed into boxes, I landed in the same city Ryan had once told me I wasn't ambitious enough to escape. The moment I arrived, I understood something immediately. Nothing had changed. Same streets, same restaurants, same coffee shop where Ryan and I used to spend Sunday mornings. Same people orbiting the same gossip. Except now, apparently, I was part of the gossip. At the rehearsal dinner, relatives kept cornering me. "Claire, how's New York? Still loving the software job? Your mother says you're managing people now." My mother looked delighted every time someone mentioned it. My father mostly stood nearby, wearing that quiet smile he'd always had whenever he knew something before everyone else. Then my cousin Nathan pulled me aside. "Just warning you." I immediately knew. "Ryan." Nathan nodded. "He's been asking about you." "Isaihu." "What does that mean?" "He talks like you two just needed time apart." I stared at him. Did he leave out the suitcase incident? Nathan nearly spit out his drink. "The what?" "Never mind." Another cousin joined us. "I heard him tell someone that you two probably would have ended up together if New York hadn't happened." I laughed. Interesting interpretation. That night alone in my hotel room, I looked at myself in the mirror. For a second, I wondered what I'd feel if I saw him. Enga? Satisfaction. Maybe some leftover grief. The answer came the next day. Nothing. The wedding was exactly what you'd expect from a hometown family celebration. A rented hall, white tablecloths, flowers everywhere, a DJ who apparently believed every wedding required the same 15 songs. I was talking with an old college friend near the bar when I noticed movement across the room. Ryan. He looked older. Not dramatically. Just enough. His hair was shorter. His clothes were nice but understated. No flashy watch. No desperate performance of success. Then he saw me. Our eyes met. He stopped. For a second, neither of us moved. My friend followed my gaze. "That's him. That's him. Want me to stay?" I considered it, then shook my head. "I'm fine." Ryan approached slowly. No swagger. No suitcase. That was already an improvement. Claire. "Ryan." He gestured toward the empty chair beside me. "Can I sit? It's a free country." He gave a nervous smile and sat. For a moment, he just looked at me. "You look good." "Thanks. New York suits you." "It does." He nodded. Silence. Old Claire would have rushed to fill it. She would have worried he felt uncomfortable. This, Claire didn't. Finally, Ryan cleared his throat. I got a new job. Good. Smaller company, marketing coordinator, nothing crazy but stable. That's good, Ryan. His smile flickered. I meant it. I didn't want him miserable. I simply didn't want responsibility for whether he was happy. I've been trying to get things back together, he said. Sounds like you're doing that. He looked down at his hands. I saw your promotion online. I nodded. I'm happy for you. Thank you. Another silence. Then, he laughed softly. You really aren't going to make this easy, are you? I'm not trying to make it anything. That seemed to hit him. He leaned forward. I've had a lot of time to think. I almost smiled. That sentence had preceded every previous attempt he'd made to come back, but this time his voice sounded different. I'm not going to tell you I pushed you anymore. I raised an eyebrow. Growth. He gave a sad laugh. Yeah. Took me long enough. I waited. I was wrong. He swallowed. About you. About success. About Vanessa. About pretty much everything. I didn't interrupt. I thought I needed someone who looked successful because I was terrified everyone else was getting ahead of me. His eyes dropped. And I took that fear out on you. For once, there was no excuse attached. No claim that he'd motivated me. Just an admission. I made you feel like what you were doing didn't matter because it wasn't impressive enough for me yet. I studied his face. Yes. He nodded slowly. I know. Then he said the words I think he traveled toward for more than a year. I regret it. I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. Not angry. Just tired. Ryan looked at me. I didn't see what I had. I leaned back. Ryan, do you know what I think? What? I think you regret losing the version of me you can see now. His expression tightened. That's not fair. Maybe not. But when I was studying after work, you didn't care. He looked away. When I drove an old car, you were embarrassed. I know. When we lived in a tiny apartment, you compared us to everyone around you. I know. Then, the salary changed. He shook his head. It's not about money anymore. Maybe not anymore. That was the difference. I believed he might actually have changed. But change doesn't automatically restore access to the people you hurt before changing. Ryan's eyes watered. I miss you. I know. I miss us. I looked around the wedding hall. Couples danced beneath cheap string lights. Someone's child ran between tables. The DJ transitioned into another painfully predictable love song. Then, I looked back at him. I don't. His face fell. It sounded cruel, but it wasn't meant that way. It was simply true. I remember us, I continued. There were good things. I'm not going to pretend there weren't. His eyes stayed on mine. But I don't want them back. He swallowed. Could we at least be friends? I smiled faintly. Why? Because we had 2 years together. History isn't a subscription, Ryan. It doesn't automatically renew. He almost laughed through the sadness. Still sarcastic. Some things survive. Then his expression became serious. I just don't want to mean nothing to you. That one reached somewhere deeper. Because once he had meant everything. And maybe that's what he'd been fighting against this whole time. Not losing the relationship. Losing significance. You don't mean nothing, I said. He looked hopeful for half a second. You are important to me. I paused. And you're part of why I understand my own boundaries now. The hope disappeared. But being important in my past doesn't give you a role in my future. Ryan looked down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, Do you hate me? No. That answer surprised him. I don't hate you. Then what do you feel? I thought about it. Grateful. His eyebrows pulled together. For what? For the clarity. He stared at me. When you told me I had no future, I could have spent years trying to prove myself to you. I glanced toward the dance floor. I could have accepted the job and stayed with you just so you'd finally think I was worthy. Then I looked back at him. But if I'd done that, every promotion would have become another test. Every apartment, every paycheck, every accomplishment. Ryan didn't move. I would have spent my entire life auditioning. His eyes filled completely. And I don't want love that requires an audition. He wiped beneath one eye quickly. I really did love you. I believe you. That was perhaps the saddest truth of all. Ryan had loved me, just not well enough. Sometimes, love doesn't fail because it never existed. Sometimes it fails because insecurity, ego, and entitlement slowly poison it until whatever remains isn't safe to live inside. Ryan took a breath. I hope someday you'll forgive me. I stood, straightened my jacket. There's nothing left to forgive. He looked confused. You made your choice. I made mine. I gave him a small smile. And we're both living with them. Claire. I stopped. His voice trembled. If you hadn't gotten that job, do you think we'd still be together? That question hung between us. I considered lying. Instead, I told him the truth. No. His face changed. Why? Because the job didn't end us. I picked up my drink. It just revealed us. And then I walked away. No dramatic applause. No public humiliation. Nobody dumped a drink on anyone. There was no revenge speech. Just a woman walking away from a man she once thought she'd build her life with. And somehow that felt bigger. The next morning, I flew back to New York. When I opened my apartment door that night, everything felt familiar. My books, my furniture, my ridiculously unnecessary coffee machine. The little plant Sophie insisted I couldn't possibly kill. I dropped my suitcase by the door, then stepped onto the balcony. The skyline stretched ahead of me, bright and endless. Years earlier, Ryan had looked me in the face and told me I had no future. For a long time, I thought the perfect revenge was proving him wrong. The 6-figure salary, the promotion, New York, the apartment. Watching him realize he'd misjudged me. But standing there that night, I finally understood. None of those things were revenge. They were simply my life. The real victory was that somewhere along the way I'd stopped building it for anyone else's approval, especially his. Ryan's regret belonged to Ryan. I didn't need to carry it. I didn't need him miserable. I didn't need Vanessa to fail. I didn't need his parents to apologize. I didn't even need him to admit he'd been wrong. Because my future had never depended on whether Ryan could see it. It depended on whether I could. I rested my hands against the balcony railing and looked toward Manhattan. Then I smiled. Ryan once told me I had no future. Maybe the woman he thought he knew didn't. Because that Claire, the woman who measured herself through someone else's disappointment, was gone. And the woman standing on that balcony? She had more future than she knew what to do with. The only thing missing from it was Ryan. And finally, that didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom.